So what are some things that I wish I knew before I became a doctor? I had a lot of interesting perspectives from the time that I was a pre-med student all the way to when I became a doctor, and a lot of things have changed. Let me just tell you that it's not what I thought it was going to be. What are some things I wish I would have known before becoming a doctor? I think the first thing was how long it was going to take. Now, a lot of times we think about medical education in terms of 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, then you go on to internship, residency, and maybe a fellowship. But what we don't always talk about are when you have to do a year extra in terms of research or working on a certain project. Sometimes the pathway to becoming a doctor can be extended, and you have to be ready for the long haul. I think one thing that I didn't understand or realize was how much of my 20s were really going to be devoted to just this goal. Now, granted, I was able to travel, I was able to see different things, I had a lot of great experiences, I made a lot of friends, but to be honest, I think one of the things I didn't realize was how much time was going to pass by. And I recommend to people who are on the journey to become a doctor, keep living your life. Don't just think that it's all about studying and becoming a doctor. I know it's going to take a lot of your time, but just make sure that you don't neglect other areas of your life, whether that's dating or it's being healthy and physically fit, whether it's doing hobbies that you like. You may not be able to do a ton of things, but make sure that you never, ever forget that there is more to life than becoming a doctor. The second thing I wish I knew was how doctors get paid, because this varies a lot. Not only do specialties get paid different rates or different amounts, but you also have differences in terms of location. You have differences in regards to practice setup and practice situation. So people in private practice making more than academics. There are even differences in terms of what types of patients you see. So if you're in an area where patients have good insurance, you are more likely to get reimbursed higher. If you're in an area where patients don't have great insurance, you are most likely not going to get paid as much as the doctor who is in an area that not only has insurances that pay well, but also may have an opportunity to do cash-based business as well. Going into ophthalmology and then eventually into oculoplastic surgery, I learned really quickly that there are huge differences in what people make, whether they're in academic or private practice. And then if somebody's in a really nice part of town or a nice area, they may have more opportunities for premium services. And also, as I mentioned earlier, insurances that may reimburse them at a higher level. So it's possible to have two people in the same specialty, but in two completely different worlds financially, just based off of their payer mix. So this is something that I didn't know before going into medical school. I wasn't sure about how that would work. Other specialties may get a more standardized salary, but there are differences, and there are pros to it as well. There are jobs that you can take beyond the job that you have with a hospital or clinic, and there are other opportunities you can take that can also allow you to have a higher income than what is stated for your specialty. So that's a good thing as well. But I just say that there's a lot of things regarding physician compensation that we aren't told. And that leads me to the next point, how hard it would be to deal with insurances. Insurance in general does not reimburse doctors appropriately. And in fact, if you're a surgeon or proceduralist, you may find that as time has gone on, we have had to see more patients because insurance has cut what they reimburse us. So what does that mean? As a doctor, you are going to have to see way more patients just to make a certain amount and to essentially make a living, cover the overhead, cover your practice, whatever that means. Ironically, more and more younger doctors are looking at lifestyle issues and lifestyle and work-life balance. So it's interesting to see how that's combining with decreasing reimbursement rates. My suggestion is that if you are in a specialty or a field where you can do some things cash-based and bypass insurance, I encourage you to learn those things. It's worth the investment, and in the long run, it may give you a buffer for those lower or reduced insurance payments. We go into medicine to help people, but we also work very hard, and it's very difficult to bill insurance, let's say $10, and they only pay you $4. In no other industry is that ever acceptable, right? If you go to a restaurant and the bill costs $80, you're not going to give them $40 and say, well, that's all we could pay. But that's how it works in healthcare, and that's how it is. And that's why a lot of doctors, even though we make decent money, we don't feel well compensated for the work that we do. The next point that I want to talk about is now that you have reduced insurance reimbursement rates, that starts to affect the types of patients that you're going to see. And a lot of people may get turned away by a doctor who says, hey, I just don't see that insurance. And some of the most talented doctors will say, hey, if I do this procedure, it's going to take me this long to do it and I barely get anything for it, and it's a strain. And then you have pressure from the administrators above you and people around you about your financial contribution. And a lot of doctors say, hey, I would love to help patients in this category or in this state or with these conditions, but I don't want to constantly be in a situation where we're not being paid by insurance. And I think that that's one point that I didn't know before becoming a doctor, was how many doctors would be in a position where they just don't see patients anymore because of an insurance, and they also don't do certain types of surgeries and procedures because of insurance. The last thing I wish I would have known before becoming a surgeon or a doctor, I wish that I would have known that it's okay to change your mind. Now, I'm happy with what I did with oculoplastic surgery, but I think a lot of people get to a certain point with their career and they feel like that's not what they signed up for, or maybe what they signed up for changed. And I want to say that one thing I didn't know, and I wish that I knew, was that you can change your mind. Yeah, maybe you'll have loans, or maybe you'll have to go back and do another residency. Maybe you may go to the business aspect of things. But I wish I would have known how easy or how flexible it was to pivot if you wanted to. And I wouldn't have been so stressed out about the specialty I picked or picking the right thing. There is some flexibility once you become an attending to create the life that you want. You don't have to work at an office that you don't want to work at. You don't have to practice or see certain types of cases that you don't want to see. Remember, the liability falls on you. So if you don't want to practice in a certain way, that's okay. You may not get paid as much for that. You may find yourself in a different industry, in a different business, still in the medical world or healthcare, but there are lots of different options. And you may even find yourself wanting to do a different specialty. But I think I wish I would have known how flexible it was once you got there to potentially explore other roles, even travel doctor roles or contracting roles where you're not working for a specific practice or office, but now you're working as a contractor. So you work for yourself, but you contract with an office or a group and work with them. So I wish I would have known this. It would have maybe caused a little bit less stress in the process. It was a pleasure going over some of these things with you. I'll be putting out more content. The purpose of my content is not only to just go over stuff about my specialty with patients that I have, but also to motivate and encourage up and coming doctors and people who are interested in the field and specialty.